Good morning or afternoon, based off of whenever you were watching this. Today we are talking about lesson 3-4. Today on the 19th of January, 2023, we are looking at the case of Marbury versus Madison as an example of early political domestic challenges in the early American Republic. Take a moment to pause here, answer the do now, read the entire slide. Please raise your hand when you are done with your do now. All right. So, hopefully you took some time to at least write something about that the Supreme Court looks at cases, says if you really, hopefully you really truly remember that they decide whether or not laws are constitutional or not. And if you look at the original Constitution, if you look at the Constitution as it was written in 1789, it doesn't actually say that in there. That's actually something that the courts figured out over time, and they actually really find it out in 1796. They figure out that this is going to be a power that they have through a case known as Marbury versus Madison, which we are talking about today. Now, at this time, the court, led by Chief Justice John Marshall, is made up of 6 men. Um, the Supreme Court underneath Marshall is going to say that the Supreme Court has the power to do something called judicial review to declare a law unconstitutional. Take a moment in your notes, the notes handout you have that looks just like this. Should have a fill in the blank, and it should be on the back, judicial review on the back, fill in the blanks, and tell us, w- uh, fill in the blanks about judicial review. Take a moment, pause right here. Okay. So this was created through the case of Marbury versus Madison. And judicial review, it's kind of it's hard to understand, and we're not going to go too much into it. This is something like if you choose to go to law school, you'll figure out why they were allowed to do this. But basically, the Supreme Court said, "I have this power now." That's like if one day I just walked in and I was like, "I have the power now to tell you that you have to do 2 hours of homework every night." Like that's just me creating my own power. And you're like, "Well, Mr. Or say if like I invent my own dress code, like I say, I don't like the color red. The color upsets me. Please no longer wear it. You can no longer wear it in my classroom, and you'll go to the dress code and say, it doesn't say this in here, Mr. Blankenship. It doesn't say we can't wear red. And I'll say, well, I've invented that power. So it sounds ridiculous when I say it, but the Supreme Court actually had legitimate political reasons they were able to do this based off of what the Constitution said. And they argued that based off of this case, they can now look at laws and say, is this law constitutional or not constitutional? So the facts of the case for Marbury versus Madison are this. Let me move myself here. So I'm gonna put myself. I'll put myself on top of Thomas Jefferson for a second. So over here, starting in the top left, John Adams was the president in 1796. He's running for re-election. He is deeply unpopular. He is one of the most unpopular presidents we've ever had. He has passed the Alien Sedition Act, which has made everybody mad. He's just also he's a hard to get along with dude. He's a great writer. He's a terrible conversationalist. Like people just really dislike him. Like it's hard to talk to him. He's always angry. Like he's just not a pleasant guy to be around. Whereas Thomas Jefferson is quiet and polite, and people genuinely like him. So Adams is going to run for re-election against Thomas Jefferson, who, by the way, is his vice president. Um, Jefferson is going to win, and he's going to become the first Democratic Republican president. So John Adams, Federalist, is going to lose to Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republican, our two political parties battling it out here. Now, Jefferson has just won, and Jefferson looks at all of Adams' laws and unpopular policies and says, I am getting rid of all those. Let me move over here. Jefferson says, I am done with John Adams' laws. We're getting rid of them. John Adams still has 8 months as president because the next president isn't sworn in until the next year. So he's got a few months to pass some laws. And Congress, which has also just been replaced with Democratic Republicans, still has Federalists in it because the Federalists don't get replaced in the next year either. So all of these Federalists are sitting there and they say, "We're about to lose our jobs in 8 months. Let's make some laws that that they can't roll back." And so they say, let's put a bunch of new judges on the court and we're going to make them all federalists. So the courts get filled with federalist judges. They create new positions. And so a new job gets created, a new judge in an area gets created, and they say that new judge is going to be a federalist, and they shove all these federalists in. And there's literally so many judges that they've created that Adams and his team does not have enough time to do all the paperwork. And all these judges, 2 days before he leaves office, Adam starts appointing all of them. And there is so much paperwork. One of the judges who is about to be appointed, William Marbury, doesn't get his letter in time. Literally, like Adams get has to leave the White House with his Secretary of State, and they leave the signed letter in the envelope for William Marbury sitting at a table. And James Madison, who is Thomas Jefferson's Secretary of State, walks in, sees the letter, and goes, "I am not delivering this." But Marbury knows that the letter is there for him. He says, "James Madison, you must send me that letter. It's been written, signed by the president. It's a legal order. You have to give it to me. I am now a judge. I need you to provide that order to me so I can start being a judge." And Madison goes, "No, I'm not going to send it." So William Marbury takes his case to the Supreme Court. He demands that President Jefferson send that letter that had been written in the White House. Jefferson and Madison, his Secretary of State, go, "No, absolutely not. We're not sending it." And so it's up to the Supreme Court to decide in Marbury versus Madison. Will William Marbury get his letter, or does James Madison, is he right? James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, are they right that they can't be forced to send a letter if they don't want to? They can't be forced to make him a judge if they don't agree with him. So today, you're going to be taking part in the Marbury versus Madison simulation. You're going to be taking on the role of one of these people. Um, you're going to read through this. When you're done doing this, you're going to raise your hand and I'm going to come over and assign you your role. You're going to read through your role, look at all the highlighted lines, and see what you need to say in this case. Any words that you don't know, I need you to like look them up and see how they're pronounced. I'm gonna give you once that time look up on the board and see how much time is left on the timer. That's when we're gonna start doing this. So this time, raise your hand and get your script.